Welcome to Into the Yes. I'm Marissa Fay, a functional nutritionist and holistic wellness practitioner.
And I'm Jen Nickel, a movement witch and intuitive Reiki master.
You are in the right place if you're ready to question society's wellness standards and prepared to be inspired to make changes that are right for you.
Join us as we get into the yes.
Let's go. All right. Well, welcome back to Into the Yes. You are joined by myself and my lovely co-host. I'm Marissa Fay.
And I'm Jen Nickel.
And we are chatting about perimenopause. This is a part 2. So if you're joining us with this episode, just know there's another episode you might want to go back and listen to. It gives a little more background and a little bit more info on what is perimenopause, when it happens, all that good stuff. But today, we want to talk about what you can do.
Yeah. And like symptoms and what they feel like, and then how to make them go away.
Yes. Because as we established in part 1, you really want to experience as few symptoms for a short amount of time as possible. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have 0 symptoms or anyone's better than anyone else if they don't have a lot of symptoms. But it does mean if you're someone experiencing a lot of symptoms, and we'll talk about which ones in particular, that there are things you can do that you have control over to minimize either the amount those symptoms happen or the intensity of them, or possibly even reverse them altogether.
Like one of the points that I think is really important here is that we use all of this as a celebration of our body, because the symptoms that we have are not, they're all insight into something. So I like what you just said about how it doesn't mean someone's better than the other, healthier or unhealthy or whatever. We're all going to experience it different because we've all led a different life.
Yes.
Right.
And I want to emphasize that, because what you just said there is chef's kiss gold. Because any symptom you have, any health issue you have going on, any life stage or phase that isn't going the way that you expect it to go or isn't going completely symptom free, we all need to understand, yes, there are things that you're probably doing right now that are contributing, but symptoms, especially when there's more than one and they fit with a theme, it takes a while to build up to that. Our bodies are resilient. They are built to be resilient. Can you imagine if cramps stopped you from living your life? I mean, we're awesome women, first of all, that we withstand everything we do with menstrual cycles and still live life and function.
Right.
But our bodies are really made to tolerate some of these things for
discomfort.
For a short amount of time. But the issue is that what leads to those symptoms showing up is sometimes years, even decades in the making.
Right. And it's your body's own response to the life you've lived. And it's genetic coding to it. Like there's a lot at play here. So, I think one of the things that's really important to me is to not feel like, oh, something wrong with me because this is happening. I did something wrong, or it's because I didn't do A, B, or C. And it's really not. This is a celebration of your body showing up for you. Symptoms happen. That's your body's language. That's how it communicates to you. So if you're having symptoms that are so much that you're like, I've got to do something about this, then celebrate that, because your body just communicated to you, yes, exactly. That's what I wanted you to do. Something about this.
Yes, totally.
So yay for that.
Yes, I cannot yes that anymore. Symptoms are like your body's tea leaves. Except less mysterious, because I have no idea how people who read tea leaves do it. But I will say, yes, like symptoms happen for a reason. And somehow we've been trained by like the kind of mainstream medical community that sometimes symptoms just happen. That is not true.
Or they just happen. And again, it feeds that, oh, well, this is wrong, and I'm going to give you something so that that's not happening anymore.
Or it feeds the, what you eat, your habits, how you think, how you move through the world, your relationships, those things, they don't really matter.
Right. That has nothing to do with it.
Such horseshit.
Right. Or this is one that I in my own inner thoughts and inner speakings say like, I do not accept it when they say, well, this is what's going to happen at your age. No, I do not accept that.
No, me
I mean,
either.
yes, to some degree, but I do not want age used as a diagnosis.
Yes, exactly. So we do not need to accept symptoms as inevitable. This is critical because when we really identify and start defining ourselves by our symptoms, that is cancerous. You have to be curious about your symptoms. And then this one can be hard for some of us. How can you lovingly address those things?
Right. Well, I can just say what I've done is like, okay, it's like a conversation with my body. Okay, you're doing this. So what's that? Why? What do you need? A
Well, and beyond,
conversation.
absolutely. And you and I have talked about this before, just like in our daily lives when COVID came up. And it's like, I always say to my body, when I get sick, when a symptom shows up, I put a hand on my heart, a hand on my belly, and I say, thank you, body. Thank you, body, for working hard. Thank you, body, for learning new things. Thank you, body, for continuing to let me live life, right? So,
Mhm.
how can you start that conversation and have gratitude for the fact that your body is communicating with you? Because what's even scarier to me is people who truly feel that they have a serious health condition that showed up out of nowhere,
Mhm.
that are just like, all of a sudden they have something very scary and they're like, I had no symptoms, zero symptoms. I felt good. I felt healthy. And then boom, I got this crazy serious health issue.
Mhm.
That's scary.
That's yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so perimenopause, let's talk about some of the common symptoms, right? And
Yep.
then let's talk about how we'd address that.
How we can show up for our body with those symptoms.
Exactly. Yes. So what for you, Jen, because you're, in this life phase,
Yeah.
what
Yep.
for you is or has been the most nagging, annoying symptom, maybe?
The one that stood out, the one that made me say, I am not going to live like this, were the sweats, the night sweats, the hot flashes. Yeah.
Yeah. And the night sweats, hot flashes, whether they happen at night or not, by the way.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about a little bit the night ones in particular, because those can be special. But any kind of that breakthrough sweating is almost always estrogen dominance. And so we talked about in part one how we can have estrogen in too much proportion to progesterone simply because we have actually too much estrogen our body's producing, or our body's not able to release that extra estrogen. That's really common, by the way, in people who have really slow bowels. So if you're not pooping at least once every day, your estrogen is backing up most likely. And if you're not doing things like sweating and taking deep breaths and drinking enough water.
Intentional sweating.
Yes.
Not
Sweating.
random out of nowhere, come in a wave sweating.
You got it. Yes. So that can be one of the reasons you might have estrogen dominance. And then the other one can be that you're overexposed to synthetic estrogens or overexposed to estrogens in food. And this is why I am not a fan of the soy rhetoric around perimenopause. I think it causes more problems than it solves. But even beyond that, I'm not a fan of exposure to xenoestrogens. And so quickly, just recapping some of what we talked about in part one, that's going to be things, chemicals found in plastics, natural fragrances, nonstick cookware, your makeup, your skincare, your cleaning products, all of these.
Perfumes.
Yes, perfumes especially.
Hair,
oh my God.
dry shampoo. Sorry, ladies.
Pesticides as well are a big one. And guess what? If you're not using organic tampons or organic pads, you are dealing with exposure to pesticides then as well. And so it can just be too much of that, right? Adding to your body's load. And so then we've got just a higher level of estrogen in the body. And that imbalance really can lead to just those sweats that come out of nowhere and those sweats that come in the middle of the night.
Right. And the thing about that, when they come, and just to describe it for anyone who is maybe just beginning to feel it or isn't, it also, for me, it comes on with a wave of an anxious feeling. So I describe it as a wave. There's a heart rate increase. There's a feeling of anxiousness. And then it's almost like this internal flame, right? But not in the good way,
Right.
and goes outward. And then every pore in your body sweats. But there is an anxious. So what happens when it wakes you up in the middle of the night is now all of a sudden you're like in this state, not only hot, but also like anxious, heart pounding, all of that. So then to try to fall back to sleep, it becomes very problematic, especially if it's happening 2 and 3 times a night, which it was for me.
Yeah, which sucks.
Yeah.
And I will also say some women who are not in perimenopause yet do experience night sweats as well, or early morning sweats. And that's going to be another indication that just those estrogen levels are probably off. And I know as a younger person, I did sometimes experience like early morning sweats around my period, especially. And that was, again, that sign that estrogen was not kind of in the right balance. But also, what I want to say about that kind of panicked feeling that comes along with it, here is another clue from your body. And that clue has to do with blood sugar balance. So here's the thing. All of our hormones are connected.
Right.
Your whole body is connected, y'all.
It's an interweb.
Yes. The idea that we would just address one thing in isolation in your body makes zero sense when you really sit and think about it. So anytime we have a hormone that's going rogue, it is impacting all of your other hormones. Now, how much it's impacting other hormones really depends. It depends on what the issue is, all the symptoms you might be saying. But I can say 90% of the clients I have that are dealing with perimenopause symptoms like these night sweats also have blood sugar balancing issues.
Which makes sense to me, Marissa, because I would notice that if I had like dessert, or I had myself a moment with some Halloween candy or things like that, it would exacerbate them that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that doesn't surprise me, right?
Right.
So this is also, by the way, if you're listening and you're like, I'm not sure I'm quite in perimenopause yet, we had talked about how it actually can start in your mid-30s. And it can end, any point into your 50s, really, just depending on your body. But this is really helpful information for anyone who cycles to know, which is, it's actually not about not eating those foods. It's not. It's about how you balance nutrients in what you're eating. And if you're someone who has middle of the night wake ups, whether or not they seem to be menstrual cycle related, it is still valid and helpful to consider this blood sugar balance piece, because I have seen so many clients who that's at the root of their nighttime wake ups. Yeah.
That and alcohol. That's another one. And I know so many people can relate to that. Like, oh, well, I drank wine, so 3 a.m. I woke up sweating. I mean, I noticed that in my 30s.
Yep, absolutely. And I would even argue that's also blood sugar. I mean, that's detoxification, kind of the liver being done, trying to remove it, right? And safely get rid of the toxic substance. But also really common is a blood sugar crash, because a lot of us, when we drink, we don't eat, or we eat only carby things. So we just get a lot of carbohydrates with our alcohol. That's like a recipe to crash and burn. Okay, so let's talk about what does it mean then to eat in a balanced way to support this perimenopause phase, and really almost any hormonal stage or phase. This is a great place to start. So where I have most people start is to consider their plate, their bowl, their cup, whatever, if you're making a smoothie, and you want a quarter of that, literally draw lines on a plate. Imagine a quarter of a plate. You want a quarter of that to be an animal-based protein. Does that surprise you, Jen?
It makes me think about all the vegans in the world, because I myself was a vegan in the world.
Yeah.
Or vegetarian.
Yeah, I was vegetarian for like 6, 7 years. So I feel that. And I very intentionally have said animal-based protein
Mhm.
because
That's a hard one.
it
I
is.
know it is a hard one.
It's even hard for me sometimes, honestly. So the reason animal-based protein is so important is that it contains nutrients that you just can't get through plant sources. It
Mhm.
also is much easier for your body to break down and absorb other nutrients from these sources. And if your body already has stress being put on it, like we had talked about last time, it's
Mhm.
just critical that you see every eating opportunity as a way to tell your body, like, I got you, you're taken
I'm
care of.
good.
You're good, to soothe, right? Not soothe
Right.
in a mindless way, right? But soothe and say, like, all this stress, I know you're carrying a lot and I'm going to take care of you,
Right. I'm not
right?
going to stress you out more by not giving you enough here.
Or giving you something really, really hard to digest,
Mhm.
right? So that's
Right.
really key here, to see these meals as this really loving signal. Okay. Then a quarter of that plate, I really advocate for gluten-free carbohydrates.
Quinoa, rice, that sort of thing.
Yep. Don't forget your starchy tubers and your squash. So potatoes, sweet
Potatoes.
potatoes. I freaking love potatoes. Don't nobody talk bad about my boyfriend potato. That's what I have to say. So whatever you like, but for me, gluten-free is important. And that has to do with the pesticide exposure in gluten, and gluten's super hard to digest and creates a lot of other digestive issues. So that's the quick note on gluten, but I'm sure we'll do a gluten-free episode.
Yeah.
That's just high level, y'all. And if you're not gluten-free, maybe start trying to learn more, start trying to incorporate less gluten containing foods. And those are going to be foods that are made from wheat. I always mess this up, barley and rye. So
Those are the gluten foods.
those are the gluten.
Wheat, barley, and rye.
Yes, yes. So those, be mindful of. Anything derived from that is going to have gluten. The next piece is half of the plate being produce, but not just any produce, y'all. Ideally, you really don't want to be eating a crap ton of raw vegetables.
So everyone who's struggling through lunch on a giant ass salad,
Cut it
this is your
out,
permission. Here's your permission. You know why you feel crappy? No, I'm not going
yeah,
to go into it, but
right?
right.
But for real, it's something as women we're taught, like, oh, just make it a salad, because we're
Right.
all concerned about our weight. We're all
Yep.
concerned. And we all have been told salads are healthy universally, and they're not. They're just not. There's a time and place. And if you feel like you have really good digestion, maybe raw vegetables once a day, right? But make them raw veggies that are easier to digest. Those are not going to be things like think about raw veggies that have just are tough, like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. These are not things when you bite into them raw that it's like, that's easy for me to chew,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So that would translate to also hard for digestion.
Bing, bing, bing. Exactly. And again, we're seeing every meal as an opportunity to say, I got you. I
Mm-hmm.
got you, hormones. I got you, perimenopause. You're taken care of. You don't need to stress right now. So
Mm-hmm.
cook your veggies is the key here. You can eat them cold, by the way. Like you could make, you could take a little bit of mixed greens, for example, and put some cooked roasted veggies on it if you really love that. Go for it,
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. If you want to do that and you feel good, do it. But I just want to encourage more people to eat more cooked vegetables. Easier on digestion, easier for your body to make use of those foods. The only things that I really think about don't really count towards that are going to be like our really hydrating vegetables, like cucumbers, for example.
Okay.
And then the other exception would be carrots. And we'll
Carrot.
talk about that. That's my next tip, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So there are a few exceptions to that rule. So don't be dogmatic, right? Like make this a goal that just more of your meals have cooked vegetables than raw vegetables. That's the key. And then fruit is game. Fruit is fantastic for us. Okay. Super hydrating. especially this time of year, we're making this episode in the summertime in our warmer months. So just think about fruit that aligns with the time of year you're in and the season you're in. And sure, you could cook your fruits, great, but they don't necessarily have to follow that same rule, especially if they're really hydrating fruits. So those are fair game too. And then the last piece is going to be, you need to be including some high quality fats in that meal. High quality fats come from animal sources like butter. Yes.
Real butter,
Not margarine, none of that fake stuff with weird oils, real butter.
and not that
I can't
vegan, whatever it is.
Yeah, none of that vegan crap.
Simply
Please.
something, whatever. Yeah.
Please. Okay. But things like real butter, ghee is fantastic if you suspect you have some issues digesting dairy. First of all, at some point we should get to the bottom of that. But in the meantime, ghee, it has a lot of the things that promote a little bit of a response from your immune system removed. So a lot of people can do that, even if they have dairy issues. And then like our meat fats, right? Like a fatty cut of meat, if you like that, or even shocker of shocks, like bacon grease. If you're using like good bacon and you want to save the grease and cook with it, go for it. And then
anyone that says use bacon grease, sign me up.
Right? I'm in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is fats also could be from fruit sources. So that's going to be avocado, olive, coconut. Those are all fruits. So those are going to be your safest sources and your most nourishing sources when it comes to, again, sending that signal to your body, like, I got you. And if you build meals that way, you are naturally going to be reducing your exposure to things like xenoestrogens and endocrine disruptors. You are naturally going to be decreasing that stress load on your body. So this is just this formula. It really works. Now, some people need to adjust things. Tweak it, right? You can customize it to your body, but that's a solid starting point for most of us. And especially if you're dealing with perimenopause symptoms. And also what I would say is don't forget to eat often enough.
This was huge for me, Marissa, because if I can just share before having this discussion with you, what my typical day would be, I would wake up and I would immediately have a cup of coffee, which I would have either black or with a small amount of almond milk. So it was coffee, no food until around 11:30. That's how I would start my day. And then I would have a breakfast type of food. It would be a smoothie or something. And then I wouldn't eat again until dinner. And then I would probably have something sweet because now I know why I would crave it so much. I used to say, I just have the sweet tooth. I inherited my dad's sweet tooth, but there was more to it than that. And that was what I was eating because, growing up as a woman, identifying as a woman and just in the world that we're in, you are trained that the least amount that you can consume and feel okay is what you should be doing. It's hard to get rid of that mindset.
Yep, it is. I feel that too.
And I didn't think I was being restrictive. I didn't think it was just like this subconscious thing. That was what I did. The longer I could hold off that first meal, the less I would eat during the day, the caloric count would be down. So there was a major culprit into why my blood sugar was a contributing factor into this perimenopausal night sweating thing.
Yep, exactly. And that's also why this is a great place to start.
And it made a huge difference. And I'm going to tell you the two parts that made a very big difference for me was to eat within an hour of waking and to change the order, eat before coffee. And then now my most favorite thing is my cup of coffee because I have doctored it up into now it holds more nutrients. So it's not this stress event drinking the coffee. It's now a more nourishing event because I can't give up the coffee. You know this. We've had this conversation.
I know. And you don't have to. Like, this is the thing. with coffee is like, it is a stressor. We know that because when we drink caffeine, most of us, you get a little sweaty, your bowels start moving, you get amped up, you get energy, you're going to experience something like that. There's a reason you like the caffeine, basically.
Yeah.
So that is a stress, right? And so we need to be thinking about how do we, if we are going to do stressful things, how do we prepare your body to handle that? And a meal before a caffeinated coffee it's magic. It really is. Fun fact too, for people to be aware of is coffee does block iron absorption. So if you were somebody who struggles with iron levels, you'd really want to think about when you drink your coffee, and maybe not having it right close to a meal, but that's just an extra little bonus tip. Yeah.
So a solid okay. So if I don't have time, I make it something quick, but I'm sure to eat something within the first hour of waking.
Yep.
And then within 2 to 3 hours again after that.
Yeah. And what I will say about this is I have a lot to say about these things, but it's too much for us right now. So stay tuned for the end of the episode. We have a really special announcement, and a way for you to learn a little bit more about what Jen just shared. Yeah. So I want to talk to you, Jen, about like, what are the things that you feel like help to address this symptom of night sweats, which, by the way, I also want to reiterate to people, while we started with that symptom and I've offered this possible solution for you to explore, everybody is different. This is not medical advice, right? Like, we're just sharing some things that might work that you might want to consider and try. Number one. Number two, night sweats aren't the only symptom that this kind of eating will help. So,
whoa, what?
I know. I'm just dropping gold. So I'm really curious, Jen, what other symptoms, when you started changing how you were eating, did you notice any other symptoms change?
Yes, mood stabilization was a big one for me, because I was having moments of almost like feeling depressed. I was having a lot of moments of anxiousness, and I had not previously in my life experienced what I would call anxiety. I also hadn't experienced severe, what I would call depression, but I was having those mood swing moments a lot more often and a lot more pronounced, where I'd be like, I remember calling my husband being, I've been crying all day. I don't know why I can't get out of the space. So that, and then also my overall energy level, I would have days where I'm like, I feel like I'm trying to make my way, like my body is made of concrete and I am fighting for every second. And I would feel like that very regularly. So those were some other symptoms that, shifting how I ate. Yeah. And then we'll get more into how I moved my body. But those were the things that started to change.
And can I also infer from that too, that sleep got better, right? Because you weren't being
woken yes, up. Because I wasn't being woken up. And if I was, it wasn't as severe, and I'm able to fall back to sleep. Yeah. And sleep is huge.
Huge. Yep. So that's just encouragement. I think I want people to know that's how much what you eat can impact how your body is expressing its health, basically.
And this was just from looking at the plate that I was building and actually eating more.
Yeah. And there were a few other little tweaks that we talked about, you know, when we talked about some of those symptoms that we do want to share.
Yeah.
And like I said, stay tuned till the end. But I want to shift focus a little. And Jen, I want to learn from you, like, what are the movement pieces of this puzzle, right? Like, what are the things that you did that were movement based that you really feel like helped you either manage these symptoms or also help to contribute these symptoms getting into, you know, remission or reversal even?
Right. Well, it was a big shift in mindset around fitness and how I approach it. So for my whole life, it had always been to correct or reform, talking about the size and shape of the body. And what we learned is harder is always better. I'm not saying that that is the fact, but that's what we learned, is that you must push yourself in order to reach this space. So I was pushing my body, especially as an instructor, pushing my body all the time and never really tuning into whether or not I could handle it. So this became another stress event. So exercise was a stress event. So I have just looked at it in a different way, meaning, okay, I haven't been sleeping well. I haven't been feeling well. I took a good solid year and backed off from the style of fitness that I had been teaching um, or participating in.
Yeah,
And it's the intensity
exactly.
is what changed.
Yes, I was just going to say, so this is like for people to really understand this, we need to be on the same page about exercise being a stressor.
Yeah. Now,
It's
this
just
is a scary topic
so
because,
scary.
okay, because let's just point this out for a minute because or hadn't reached the limit of what I was willing to deal with for symptoms, which is you're going to eat more and work out less intensely. That's a scary thought for a woman because that is going to translate. I mean, not necessarily for everyone. Every body is different, but it might translate into the scale or the size.
Yep.
And it did for me.
And sometimes the body needs a little bit more body fat to feel safe to do the other things you want it to be doing.
Right. So I just want to point that out that I know we're talking about scary things, but it's just a matter of like, are these symptoms and how you feel, did they outweigh that need to keep pushing?
Yep.
And that's a personal choice for someone to make. And my personal choice was, I am not going to live like this. I am not going to live being woken up during the night, not having any energy. I am too young to feel like this. And if it means new pants, then it means new pants.
Well, and also you have a goal of possibly getting your period back, right? Like right? Like you're open to that. You're not someone who's like, let's just get this over with. You have a connection to your cycle. So
yeah,
I think that also places a different openness on how your body might respond that other people may or may not have, you know?
yeah. But again, just to point out, this is a very personal journey for all people experiencing it. And we're not here to say, if you are pushing your body working out, that that's wrong. But if you are coming into this space with symptoms that you want to change, this is one of the ways that you can really effectively do that.
Yeah. And I would just really encourage folks, movement is still fantastic. Movement is medicine, right? Like
Right.
we need to move our bodies. And in general, most of us spend a little too much time not moving. So we are not saying don't move your body. We're saying look at the intensity of the movement that you're doing,
Right.
Because
and how you're approaching it. Are you approaching it? Have you nourished your body for it?
yeah,
Like, are you showing up to a HIIT class and you've had a cup of coffee and maybe a banana at most? So
and
there's a difference there.
and did you sleep the night before, right? Like,
Right.
so you really, I want to encourage people to build flexibility into your movement routine based on what your body is telling you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And we can start to shift. Yes. So like if you didn't sleep well the night before, you might show up to a class that, it's part of your routine, but you might take lighter weights that day or do less reps. Or, if the instructor is offering jumping jacks, you take the low impact version of that. So you can look at it in a different way. Like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. That's already stressful on my body. So I'm not going to push it. Today's not the day to build more. Today's the day to just move and know that I'm moving.
Mm-hmm. And I would even say it's also a great time to just automatically shift to our low impact, low intensity friends. And those are going to be things like walking. You cannot get enough low intensity walking, y'all. So walking, most underrated form of exercise, by the way. Yes, it is exercise. Yes, it counts.
It's not just for 60-year-old women.
No.
You don't have to be running.
No.
All the time.
One of the best things we can do for our bodies at any phase of hormones is or life stage is to walk outside.
Mhm. Well, and that's another piece to this that has created a shift for me. We'll get into that, but I just think it's important to point out that if I'm big on mindset, as I know you are, Marissa, and this is what I think is the most important piece to everything that we're talking about here. When you show up to move your body, that you recognize that you are showing up for yourself, that this is an opportunity to care and love yourself. It's not, and just changing that could be step one in this journey, because we're throwing a lot out there and that could be overwhelming. And maybe you're not ready to give up your daily runs but just maybe think about how you're showing up to them and what the mindset is around that.
Yeah.
And be loving and gentle with yourself from that space.
Yeah.
And
I love that approach and that invitation, but I will play devil's advocate and be mean mommy, which is what I have to do sometimes in my work, and say, if you're someone who has a lot of symptoms and signs of stress and you doubt this type of shift could really help, and you feel like fear about it, it's probably time for you to try it.
it's your body telling you. Yeah.
And I will tell you, as a former CrossFit person, y'all, I don't think it gets more intense, by the way. It took me a long time to break up with CrossFit. Okay. I get it. I also was a group fitness instructor. I taught spin back to back with a boot camp class. Like, I get it, right? Movement feels good at some point. It gives you those endorphins. It gives you adrenaline, those stress hormones. When they first start pumping out, it feels really good. And then we start chasing it. And as soon as you're chasing it, it's time for your body to have some rest. It's time to change it up. So honestly, these two things together could be the secret sauce for plenty of people to turn the volume down on these symptoms.
It did a lot for me. It did a lot for me. It took a lot, but it also did a lot. And, one of the things that I share with anyone that comes to any of the classes that I lead, how do you know if something was too intense for you? It's hard to know, especially if you have really conditioned yourself that you always have to feel like you've depleted yourself in order for it to have counted. Is to just be aware of how you feel in the hours after you've done it. All right. If you feel exhausted, depleted, you need more coffee, or you're reaching for more caffeine, or you're craving a lot of sugary things, that might be an indicator that workout pushed you too far. You should feel, when you're finished with a fitness routine or a movement routine, you should feel energized. And it should be like, I like to call it an undercurrent of solid energy, which is what you'd also feel if your blood sugar is balanced, and why this all goes hand in hand. But you know, if you're going to this HIIT class and you leave there and that is it, you're like, I have to stop and get an iced coffee if I'm going to get through the rest of today. Then that's a good sign that class was too intense for where you're at right now, that it's overloading the stress bucket is what I call it.
Yep. And I have some even more little tidbits related to that, of ways you can know if something is too much for your body. But I'm going to do the thing no one likes, because once again, we're talking for a long time, and we are committed, y'all, to keeping our episodes around 30 minutes so that it really can be doable for you to listen in and feel like you get something out of this and can move on with your day and your life. So the response to us just even starting the conversation has been really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because these aren't conversations that are typically being had.
No. And in fact, we've heard from a number of people already, and it's just been a couple of days that our part 1 has been out. We've heard already people saying like, gosh, I didn't know other people experienced this. I didn't know other people felt this. So I'm just really proud of us for getting this message out there and starting this conversation. And we have decided that we want to do more for you all. So
yeah, there's so much here.
There's so much.
And it's individualized.
Yes. And as you can tell, like, we could go on and on and on. And we could talk about our personal experience. I could talk about client experiences. I could talk about, why, and you could talk about why and how and all of that. And we want to do it in a space that's going to serve you all even more. So hold the date, September 7th. It's a Wednesday, from starting at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. for our Pacific folks. We are doing a perimenopause workshop for you all.
What?
No
one told me.
And we're trying to come up with a clever name, the perimenopause workshop, the pause for perimenopause. So we'll see how clever we get.
We're going to get so clever, you won't even know I hate you.
You won't. You're going to be amazed. But even more amazed will you be if you attend, because we are going to give away so many tips and tricks, but not only that, things that you actually can do, things that are realistic. We are also going to have time for your questions, because everyone is unique. And honestly, if you have a question related to perimenopause or something going on with you, I could guarantee someone else has that question. Guarantee. Yes. So again, the date is September 7th.
Hold that spot.
Hold it. We're going to have a special early bird rate for our loyal podcast listeners, because we love you. We're so glad you're here. And then maybe you'll share this episode or future episodes where we talk about this topic with people you care about who could benefit from this workshop, to get that early bird rate too. And
listen, the results will happen. The change will occur. Like, this is a workshop that will have information in it for you to start feeling better.
And for you to use right away.
Yeah. Easy stuff.
It's not going to be like, here are 15 supplements that you now have to buy. Here's a special workout routine you have to buy and do.
Right. Like, go get this blood work and then follow this and then call this person and then shine your shoes. Yes. And then, no, it's not going to be like that.
Nope. It's going to be like, you could do this now. You could do this tomorrow. Right. So we are all about it being super useful to you. So again, that's September 7th. It's going to be likely a 2-hour workshop. So again, starting at 3 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to be jam-packed, that I'm certain of. Yeah. Yeah. And because we love our podcast listeners, we are giving you an exclusive to be the very first to sign up for this workshop. Also, the landing page is not quite pretty and ready, but we can take payment and reserve your spot. We do anticipate that this workshop is going to fill up, and we did put a cap on it so that everyone can have time to ask questions and really get the most possible out of this experience. You can grab your spot today at bit.ly/inthepause. It'll be in the description too of this podcast episode, wherever you're listening, so you can see it there. And then go ahead and enter the code into the yes when you go to checkout, and you will get the workshop for a very special early bird price of only $49, which is awesome. Okay, so thank you for joining us for part 2 of our perimenopause series, To Bleed or Not to Bleed.
To bleed or not to bleed.
And stay tuned. We're going to do another episode that also incorporates perimenopause, but gets a little bit into the energetics and the magic of it all, because it wouldn't be us without that.
Right. We need that magic piece, because that's inside all of us.
It is.
We can't leave any aspect out.
That's right. You are a whole, complete, beautiful being, and it is all connected. So, Jen, what are you a yes for after today's episode?
Oh my God, what am I a yes for? I'm a yes to bleed. At least one more time, I'd be so proud of my body. I just want to see my uterus one more time.
I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I do.
And then I can let it go.
Okay.
I'm going to say that.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe in your uterus.
I believe it too.
I believe there's at least one more time.
It's here for me.
It's here for you. That's right. Yes.
And I'm here for it. Okay. What are you a yes to?
I am a yes to women starting early and often to pay attention to what their symptoms are saying to them and how they can shift their hormones and just reduce the like expected discomfort with all of these different hormonal life changes. Like, really, we do have so much ability to influence how our body will respond in these different life phases and stages that relate to our hormones, including perimenopause. So please, please, please do not settle for the idea that you're just going to be miserable, right?
Right. Right. We don't have to accept misery.
That's right. Say no to misery.
So your yes is yes to no to misery.
Yes, exactly. If that's not confusing enough, then this isn't a perimenopause episode.
Right.
Right?
Because, we have confused brains when we reach this age too.
It's all a part of it too. Join the workshop. We'll tell you more about it. Okay.
Right.
Thanks for joining us, y'all. We are loving the
Adios.
conversations. Share this episode with a friend who could use it. Rate and review us, especially on Apple Podcasts. We accept 5-star reviews and
no less.
And any compliments you want to give us.
All the compliments.
That's right. And we'll see you next.
Thanks, friends.